And she went on, "No one who knew Diana will ever forget her. Millions of others who never met her but felt they knew her will remember her. I, for one, believe that there are lessons to be drawn from her life and from the extraordinary and moving reaction to her death. I share in your determination to cherish her memory." The cortege is now reaching the bottom end of Constitution Hill and coming out in front of Buckingham Palace, and will shortly pass the Queen and the royal family. A bow from the Queen as the coffin passed the west side of Buckingham Palace. The Duchess of York, who was one of her closest friends, who joined the royal family as she did. And those members of the royal family will now go separately by car to the Abbey. We have not yet, of course, seen the Prince of Wales, or Prince William, or Prince Harry. They weren't there at Buckingham Palace, and it is said they may be joining at some stage the funeral procession itself, but for the moment we do not know. A simple card on the first of those wreaths, just saying, you may have been able to read it, "Mummy." Someone paying their own tribute, the skirl of the pipes and a Scottish lament sounding out from across the crowd. Otherwise, this procession has had no music. The gun carriage turns now into the grand processional route of the Mall, down which so many processions have passed, down which Princess Diana herself went on her wedding day, cheered by the crowds on either side. And mourners standing thick to left and to right. At St. James's Palace, the Prince of Wales, behind him Prince William, Prince Harry, walking down towards the Mall, so it does look as though they will join in the procession, in the funeral cortege. Charles Spencer, Earl Spencer, on the left of Prince William. He'll be giving the address later on, and the Duke of Edinburgh. Everyone's thoughts must surely be with those two boys, her sons, as they wait for the funeral cortege to make its way down the long, open road of the Mall to where they will first see it as it comes into sight by St. James's Palace. This cortege is now halfway along the Mall. And still as it goes, silence from the mourners watching, the million who've come here to London, tears as it goes past, a few flowers still being thrown. And it's now about halfway along the Mall, on its way to the road that joins from St. James's Palace, where waiting are the close members of the family. The Duke of Edinburgh on the left talking to Prince William, Charles Spencer, the brother in the centre, Prince Harry, and the Prince of Wales on the right, and they start walking down the road towards the Mall. And then walk forward and join as principal mourners the funeral cortege. And behind them, taking up their place, the 500 members of charities who benefited from the princess's work, and so increased fivefold in size, but still led by this simple gun carriage, the Welsh guardsmen on either side who'll be the bearers for the coffin when it reaches the Abbey, and the gun carriage with the coffin. The cortege continues on down the Mall towards Horse Guards Parade on the right, where it will leave the Mall itself and turn down towards Whitehall. And here are some of the many hundreds of people from the charities that the princess supported. There are all kinds of charities represented here, inevitably many of them charities connected with children, but then all the other interests that she had. The ballet companies, for instance, the English National Ballet, the London City Ballet, the Red Cross, with whom she worked on the campaign against mines, and Relate, the charity that tries to mend broken marriages. Watching the coffin as it goes past, the chief rabbi, Jonathan Sacks, who's come here to pay tribute because he can't go into the Abbey today, Saturday, a Jewish holy day. Groups of charity workers, some of them being pushed in wheelchairs, some with sashes, all of them told not to dress formally for this occasion any more than the royal family themselves dressed formally, but in lounge suits. Some children among them, some of them carrying flowers. Douglas Bader Foundation, Bernardo's, Child Accident Trust, Sports Association for the Disabled, Great Ormond Street Children's Hospital, the Leprosy Mission, Leukemia Research Appeal, London Symphony Orchestra. Many of these the Princess gave up in favour of her 6 favourite charities, and one of them, who may be here today, the All England Lawn Tennis and Croquet Club, said rather wryly, I don't really think she was that interested in croquet. Mrs. Shan Kidd, the Princess's mother, and her 2 sisters, Lady Jane Fellows and Lady Sarah McCorquodale, with her arriving, Lady Sarah on the left of your picture there, and being greeted by the Dean. And both the sisters will be reading poems in the service. Sir Robert Fellows behind the tall figure, the Secretary to the Queen. Mrs. Shan Kidd was separated from the Princess's father when she was only 6 years old, causing the whole family and the Princess, as she herself said, much turmoil and unhappiness in her early years. So this, the close family of the Princess, led to their places as the congregation is almost all in place. Though it will be another 25 minutes or so before the funeral service itself begins. And we still await here in the Abbey the arrival of the Queen and then of the children of the Princess. Still walking down the distinctive red road of the Mall before turning off to Horse Guards. The Duke of Edinburgh on the left, Prince William with his head bowed, Charles Spencer, the little figure of the red-headed Prince Harry, and the Prince of Wales. The Queen Mother driving by car to the Abbey. She didn't come out into the forecourt to see the cortege go by. It was at her house, Clarence House, that the Princess spent the days after her engagement and the day before her marriage. And she was known to be very saddened by the subsequent breakup of that marriage. Now the cortege veers away from the Mall into the Horse Guards approach road. Coming down from the gap there in the long white buildings of Carlton House Terrace. Swollen with the ranks of the 500 charity workers who've been chosen by their charities from the 110 charities that had the princesses their patron, or with which she was closely associated. And behind her two sons, Prince William and Prince Harry, who are said to have chosen for themselves to walk in this procession, daunting particularly for the young 12-year-old, soon to be 13, Prince Harry, on his father's right. This must be one of the quietest and the saddest processions that this great open space of Horse Guards has ever witnessed. Usually this is the scene of bands playing, horses with their bits jangling, drums, marching feet, orders shouted. Here today, it just sees the simple gun carriage and the same heavy crunch of the guardsmen's feet as they walk on the gravel approach towards Horse Guards Arch. brief private moment in the dark of the archway, a hand put on Prince Harry's shoulder, and then out again into the glare of the sunlight and 1,000 eyes on them as the cortege emerges from Horse Guards and will turn to the right, down Whitehall, towards the Cenotaph Memorial and on to Parliament Square.
Beş saniye gördüm.
The Queen now leaving Buckingham Palace on her way to Westminster Abbey, and uniquely now the Union flag will be flown at half-mast from the palace staff. As she goes down towards Birdcage Walk. The Union flag raised and then lowered to half-mast, where it will stay for the funeral. Another example of a breach of what is thought to be the all-important protocol in response to the public mood. And so the coffin is nearing the final stages of its journey to the Abbey. Coming down Whitehall now, past all those government buildings, the Cabinet Office and the Welsh Office and the Home Office, and down towards Downing Street. And still Prince William, with his head hung, walking next to his grandfather. Prince Harry on his father's right, and Charles Spencer in the centre. And the Queen coming down Birdcage Walk towards Westminster. Her part in today's proceedings will end at the Abbey. The members of the royal family are not going to the final stage, to Althorpe House, for the burial. The cortege reaches the cenotaph and is saluted. A memorial to the dead of the First and Second and subsequent wars.
Always.
The Queen Mother, and the Queen, and Prince Edward at the west door of the Abbey. The Dean, who will be conducting the service, greets them at the door, as he will later the Spencer family. And the procession is now coming into Parliament Street, the final approach towards Parliament Square. The Very Reverend Dr. Wesley Carr, the Dean of Westminster, escorting the Queen, and the Queen Mother walking with a stick with her grandson beside her. And they make their way to their places in the nave as the coffin enters the final stages of this long and moving journey to Westminster Abbey. the great procession of charity workers who've been following the cortege ever since halfway down the Mall, and who will now leave it to go separately to St. Margaret's to listen to the service there, as the coffin itself is borne alone, followed by the members of the family, to the west door of the Abbey. Coming down Broad Sanctuary now, the final approach road, in this brilliant sunshine, with these people who've come here 2-3 days ago to stand here and mourn as their princess passes. And as the cortege turns towards the west door of Westminster Abbey, the gun carriage and the guardsmen who will bear the coffin inside, we join Tom Fleming, who is in the Abbey.
On a September day in 1982, I described the scene on the first official visit overseas alone of Diana, Princess of Wales. She was 21, and she was representing Her Majesty the Queen at the funeral of a beautiful and much-loved princess who had died some days before in a tragic car accident, Princess Grace of Monaco. Little did I imagine that 15 years later to the month, I would be watching the arrival of a simple coffin draped with another royal standard, bearing the body of that beautiful and much-loved young princess of our own country, killed 6 days ago in a tragic car accident. The bearer party, found by men of the Prince of Wales Company from the 1st Battalion, the Welsh Guards. Will now lift the coffin from the gun carriage. Utter silence in the sanctuary. Coffin surmounted by family flowers. The little prince's wreath to the right. And slowly, the coffin will be raised. To be carried now so gently and with infinite care through the railings heaped with flowers and messages to the great west door of Westminster Abbey. Beyond that door, all now await the beginning of a service which will become, for an hour, the focus of a nation's remarkable outpouring of grief and affection. A service which marks the first and public part of a funeral that will end later this afternoon quietly and far from the public gaze in a green corner of Northamptonshire. the coffin the chief mourners, Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. The Earl Spencer, Princess's younger brother, Prince William, her elder son, Prince Harry, will be 13 in 9 days' time. His father, the Prince of Wales. Coffin received by the Dean of Westminster, the Very Reverend Dr. Wesley Carr. Through into this building which has seen so many occasions of history, so many occasions of heartbreaking remembrance. And when the bearer party halt within the west door, the service will begin. The collegiate body turns to face eastward, and led by the beadle and the organist and master of the choristers, Mr. Martin Neary, who has arranged the music for this whole service, and by the choir who sing now the familiar funeral sentences in a setting by William Croft, who was organist here in the Abbey from 1708 to 1727. The slow procession through the nave begins. I am the resurrection and the life, saith the Lord. I know that my Redeemer liveth. The Lord gave, and the Lord hath taken away.